This is Alan Abrone going live here today. ARA Self Empowerment Podcast, where we attempt to help those who are under the sound of our voice. We're all about community impact over profit. And if you get an opportunity, I want you to do me a favor. Go over to YouTube, ARA Self Empowerment. You'll see the African continent, the logo. Like, share, and subscribe. Now let me say this. I shouldn't have to say this, but of course, when you see an African logo, people are more times than not will assume or go toward that you're militant. And it's ironic for militant or anti-government, anti-police, or down with the white people, etc., etc. But it's something about people who fly Nazi flags and a Confederate flag. It's all about heritage when they do it. Reminds me of a rap song, although I don't listen to rap anymore. It said it's cool when they do it, but it's a problem when we do it. It's cool if they go down the street flying flags that actually promoted racism, whether they see that or not. But let's not get off the topic here today. We're all about community impact. We're all about bringing people together. This is the United States of America, and the only way you can bring a people together is to educate a people. If you want to divide a people, if you want to destroy a people, all you have to do is put together a bunch of ignorant people and then take intelligent people at the top who know what they're doing. And they just feed a lot of nonsense and propaganda to the ignorant people or the unlearned people. And I guarantee you, you will have what we have today, a bunch of problems. And so let's dive right on into this hot topic today, ARA Self Empowerment Podcast. My name is Alan Abrone, and I'm your host on today. And so I hope you continue to follow me, whether on YouTube or on Facebook, or wherever you may find this video. Again, you can come to Facebook and find me at ARA Self Empowerment Podcast. Go over to YouTube, ARA Self Empowerment, the green African logo, continent. You will see that. Click that like, share, and subscribe. Now, today's topic concerning this podcast is the American Civil War. I would like to say I'm discussing the Civil War 100 years ago, but I'm actually discussing the possibility of an American Civil War. I also want to throw in a little caveat: politics. So let's jump on politics first, and then let's talk about the possibility of this American Civil War, modern day American Civil War. Now, what is politics? In simple forms, politics is who gets what, when, where, and how often. And so when you hear people saying, hey, you're playing politics, well, understand that what they are doing, or whomever, is trying to determine what group of people should receive an advantage, or what group of people should have the most say or have the most input, and who should not. Who is qualified and who is not. And that's what politics is all about. And this is why we have two major political parties within the United States of America, which is the Democratic Party and the Republican Party. And because people are dealing in politics, then you get people, and I want to bring these people out because I'm always discussing them, because they are the mouthpiece for many Republican party individuals. They're the mouthpiece to speak for white America. Not all of white America now. We're talking about those that hold to the Confederate cause, the lost cause. And so you have people like Officer Tatum, Candace Owens, Tim Scott. I think it's another governor. I think he's a South Carolina governor, North Carolina governor, or whatever. He said he's not an African American. He said he's an American. Okay, sounds good on, just to say something like that, but I don't really have to dig deep. Just a simple question. What's on your driving license? What's on your birth certificate? If someone was to call in a police report, if they say I saw a tall American walking down the street. We say things that sound good, but in reality, it doesn't work. That's what a theory is all about. It is something that should hold true. And basically, this is how things go, and let's see if it holds true or not. That's what makes it a true theory, if it holds true. And if in your theory that we are all Americans, then why do we keep speaking about blacks leading this and Mexicans this? And I want to keep talking about that too. Why? And it's the funny thing about it, whenever it's addressed, we fall back on this double bind. Let's stop talking about it so much. If you would stop talking about it, it'll go away. Okay, well then why don't you live by that? Quit talking about black this and all these color statistics. Just say Americans lead in violence. Say Americans on American crime. Don't say black on black or white on white crime. Just say American on American crime. Call it domestic crime. Say that. You're not going to do that. You know why? Because it's all about politics. And you're trying to maintain your superiority. Who is your? Those that started the first Civil War. Or you can almost call the Revolutionary War Civil War too. Or probably Texas War. But that's another podcast. So let's just stay, for argument's sake, the first Civil War between the North and the South. And what was that all about? Some people say it was over state rights. The right to what? Own humans, to make a high profit? Exactly. And if it was a second Civil War, it would be over the same things. It's no different. It's the fact or the right to own slaves. The right to free labor. We hear people like Candace Owens and Officer Tatum and many other, Tim Scotts of the world. They hold to this human capital theory. If you work hard enough, if you invest enough in your education and pull yourself up by your bootstrap, no matter what your parents were or whatever status that you have attained or had or did not have, you will make it. Really? Okay. That's partial true. That's partially true. And that's the problem with politics. The problem with the so-called American dream is rarely placed in context. It's rarely spoken of in full truth. Just like race in America. Race in America is not context. It doesn't. I won't say it doesn't make sense, because it obviously makes sense when you're trying to hold a certain power or keep a certain advantage. But it doesn't make sense when you're defining race in America. And let me break it down, and I'm gonna jump back over to this possible American Civil War. And I'm gonna just interject this as I'm speaking on this race thing. Just as the first Civil War ended with the South losing, if you did a second one, it would end the same way. It wouldn't end any different. The South would lose. The so-called Republican races, whatever you want to call them, they would lose. And in fact, the only difference from the second Civil War is that we would all lose, and we would possibly be speaking Japanese, well, not Japanese, let me back up, possibly be speaking Chinese, North Korean, and possibly a little Iranian. You know, those take your pick on whichever language that you decide you want to speak. And so as I heard an officer, well, he was an officer, but he was a military, I think he was a staff sergeant. I can't remember the rank, but he made a awesome speech. And his speech was that we don't want war. He said, but if you want war, he said that we have skills and we're prepared. And he said, I promise you that someone else will raise your sons and your daughters. I want to add something to that. He made a good speech. It was true. And to you that think that an American Civil War would end in white people winning, or just as crazy as Adolf Hitler that thought he could defeat all of America, Russia, kill all the Jews, you took on too many enemies. You had a good idea. I mean, possibly could have won. What I mean, good idea, it was bad for people who weren't of their persuasion. But it was a bad idea that you thought that you could actually conquer the whole world outright, you know, not just straight up outright. You know, so you are delusional if you think that white people, I don't care if what kind of bombs you have, atomic and everything, your atomic bombs are useless within the borders of the United States of America when you are trying to fight a urban and domestic war. There has no one ever in the history of the world been able to fight an urban domestic war where the people you're fighting are within your borders. Nobody. It might have happened for a while, but eventually it crumbled because it's not going to happen. And in this case, you're stupid enough to think or ignorant enough to think that you're going to launch a all-out war within your borders with so many enemies that you have created around the world. You possibly have enemies on other planets that you don't know about. But what I'm saying, you have too many enemies that you have created. You have gone around the world, and I'm talking about those who believe in colonialism and this white destiny thing, the manifest destiny, or whatever you believe. You've created enemies in Africa, on the continent of Asia, in the Middle East, in parts where Korea, Vietnam. You have enemies everywhere. You've now created enemies in Mexico. So you have enemies on all four sides, and you're trying to fight a war within and have enemies on without. That is that's suicide. Because even if by some miracle you're able to take over the whole United States and win the Civil War, do you actually think that you're not going to be weakened? You're going to be compromised? But see, when you are delusional and when you are blind to hate and the devil has your mind, you can't see straight. You can't think straight. Even with an educated degree, you can't think straight. You have all these people that a lot of them have degrees. They have experience, have wealth. But because they're blinded by hate and denial, they can't realize the dude or sister, whatever you want to call yourself, to try to fight a civil war within the borders of the United States is utter suicide. Because this is 2024. This is not 1864 or 1860, where most of the black people were illiterate or couldn't own a gun, let alone shoot one. You have a large amount that know how to shoot guns, a large amount of African Americans that are in law enforcement, military, and you actually think that the majority are going to lay down. And you actually think that the Russians, the Chinese, the Koreans and the Mexicans are just going to not see their opportunity to get their lick in. You just had people go and take a plane in 9/11 and run it into buildings. Didn't care that they lost their life. And you actually believe in your right mind that if you launched a civil war, that they wouldn't seize the opportunity to blow up some more buildings? Crazy. Straight delusional. Delusional. And so let's jump right in on the race thing. This is what makes it so funny and sad. You know, I've said this before, and I've had people get mad at me for saying it, but it's the truth. Over 60% or more of all African American women were raped during during slavery and even after that, right? So, in theory, or in reality, that's not even a theory, that's reality. The reality of it is most black people in America are related to white people at some point. So they're so mad at their own, offsprings? I mean, you've actually created most of the black people you see today. Not saying all of them, because there were a lot of African American people, or I wouldn't say African Americans, Africans who were never raped or were not mixed. And it wasn't a lot. I would say about 25, 30%, possibly 40% that were not. You know, I look at my dad's father, who was African, but his mother was mixed, was multiracial or possibly biracial. And so when I look at my DNA of 86% and I see 14%, I see the 14% from my dad and my mother. Basically, you see from my mother's side and my daddy's mother, you see the European coming in. But if I go back through my father and look up his past, I see African. So it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see who were being raped. It was the women. They were raping all the black women. That's just a fact. And that's something that in America is so, I don't even want to call it retarded, because I want to keep this civil, and I want you to understand what we're talking about today when we start talking about politics and this possible American Civil War. And these are the things that Candace Owens, Officer Tatum, Tim Scotts of the world, they don't want us to talk about from a social psychology standpoint. They want to talk from a statistical standpoint, where research is very seldom questioned. Who did the research? What makes it the authority? What makes you the authority? You see? So, and that's where most research is empirical research. It's based on observation, experience, and on what we call a qualified, or someone that we deem as the authority. So who says who's the authority? Who says that? You know, people go out and make all these statistics all the time. Black people lead this, black people, based on whose research? And how did they come about those numbers? And if black people lead in all of those numbers, can you please define for me black? Can you define for me what it means? Because I keep hearing most of you say you're not black or African American. You say you're just an American. So I'm trying to figure out, if you're simply just an American, who are the black people? And how did you come up with your research on that? And I'm trying to figure out, like, for example, Barack Obama, for example. I don't want to talk about myself. Let's talk about Barack Obama. Barack Obama had an African dad. He had a European, Caucasian, however they want to define themselves, because I don't want to define you. Okay? But she was white, lily white from Kansas, I think. I could be wrong. Please inbox me, message me, and correct me if I'm wrong. I thought someone said, from my limited research of her, because I wasn't researching his mother like that she was from Kansas, that she was a European American or American white. That's his mother. Well, my question is this: how is he black? Is he black because you're tracing a father, or is he black because he just have black in him because he's his father, and he's no longer white because it's been mixed with black? Is that the theory? Is that the educated guess that you're coming up with when you define black and whatever? So, are you in theoretically saying or whatever that if you're mixed with anything other than white, you're no longer white? But I want to ask the question to you that are under the sound of my voice. Why can't it be if you're mixed with anything but black that you're no longer black? Why does it have to be if you mix with anything other than white, you're no longer white? It's because you really secretly believe that the white people are superior. And so to be white, you can't be mixed with anything. But you can be mixed with everything under the sun and still be black. Wow. Okay. Is that how you want to see it? And that within itself is basic white supremacy that people never challenge or question. So when we start doing statistics on black versus white, we would have to know the true DNA of that individual for it to be a black versus white crime. They would have to be 100% European, 100% African, and then we could say black Africans committed these crimes and white European committed this crime, and based on those numbers. But if we're trying to determine who commits the most crime by race, we would have to break it down in like African, European, multiracial, biracial. And if you get to self-identify as European, white, or whatever, then you're basically saying it's okay for all these alphabet mafia people or community people who want to identify as whatever they want to say they are based on how they feel. How is that any different? You're making up definitions of race. You're grouping everybody in groups of what race based on what? On skin tone? Because it's sure not based on DNA. And who is better, black or white, African or European? Who's better, based on the last 300 years or the whole history of the world? Let me say it like that. And so I guess we go with the last 300, since in the last 400 years, Africans are multiracial, biracial, African Americans, niggers, Negroes. My God, it's so many definitions and titles. I don't know where to start, where to end, and where we get in the middle of, where you see light or where it's just completely dark. Because people just vacillate back and forth, moving goalposts all over the place, and just say, we all bleed red. Stop trying to be so divisive and saying all of these crazy statements that they know is crazy. I haven't seen anything like this since Barack Obama. Everything is Barack Obama's fault. Is it his daddy fault or the mother fault? If Barack Obama is such a horrible individual, well, his mama is white. Did it come from the white side or the black side? We sound like a bunch of in-laws fighting over the child, the grandchild. Yeah, it's a bad grandchild on Mondays because that's his other side, not our side. So which side of Barack Obama is the bad side? Is this the white side or the black side? Or is it that when the mother had sex with the African, everything became bad? She just lost her mind and it became polluted. Is that what it is? Once you have sex with a black man, you're polluted. But when a black woman has sex with a white man, she's not polluted. Was her DNA altered like in the movie Alien when she had sex? That's a theory that so many biracial, multiracial children who are the product of slavery of 60% rape, were their mind altered? Should we, when we're talking about all this crime stuff, should we look into the fact that most of the people that we're talking about are so deviant? Is it because they are the product of an altered DNA? Here, let's talk about this when we start talking about how many of the Republican Party candidates are all on this, their so-called holy horse of maintaining a Christian family, and I'm all for it. To maintain a father and a mother relationship, I'm all for it. And many of you You go with this status attainment theory. You believe in that. I do too. I believe in both status attainment theory and human capital theory. I believe you should put them together. And so what you have is, you have people saying that if you have a mother and a father and people have a good Christian home and a good public schools or private schools or whatever, then that child is most likely to follow the same thing, to go out and duplicate what the parents had. If you could have been a good, clean environment, amen, I agree with that. The problem with that is that, I've said this before, it's somewhat comical and sad. It's almost like someone coming and pissing in your bed. I mean, pissing all in it. Soaked it up in piss. And then go and get in their clean bed. And then, because you're standing over their bed saying, can I get in the bed with you? And then they want to say, why do you want to get in the bed with me? Why don't you learn to build up your own bed? And then you start complaining about the piss in your bed. And they say, and you're over there with them. They say, well, so if you want to complain about the piss in your bed and complain about me, then why are you over here trying to be in my bed? And that's what it sounds like within the United States of America. So many white Americans are saying, if it's so horrible in the United States of America, go back to your own native country. Well, the first thing is, why are they over here in the first place? Because this continent, America, is not their native country either. Secondly, the fact that you are asking them to go back to the native country that you done pissed in and pissed all over is crazy. You went over there and pissed all in other people's native lands, robbed them of natural resources, and have basically destabilized these countries for hundreds of years. And then you holler about, and I'm not talking about just 100 years and then you stop. Even after that, after colonialism was technically ended, you still always find a way to go in and assassinate people who were not loyal to allow American companies to come in and profit and to take advantage and to basically steal natural resources from third world countries. It's almost like robbing from the poor, giving to the rich, instead of robbing from the rich, redistributing to the poor. It's Robin Hood in reverse. And so these are the things that we don't talk about. So when we get on this possible American Civil War, we're actually fighting over slaves again. See, it's the same thing. It's let's fight over slaves. And this is the same thing that happened in Nazi Germany. So many people, why are they hating on Germany? I mean, on Adolf Hitler. He's really good for the nation. Yeah, he's good for the nation, their nation. He's good for white people. It's like plenty of people love lions. Plenty of people love all types of wild animals. But they never think about how the animals that you like or love and see them playing with their cubs, how they go and kill other people's cubs and kill other people's fathers and mothers to come back and feed them. So we are like animals that we go into other people's lands and countries. We kill their fathers and sons, their daughters and mothers, and even rape their daughters and their mothers, and leave back seeds that we have raped. And then we're looking around, why are they so angry at us? Why are they so mad? And so when we start looking at the possibility of an American Civil War, which is crazy, because if it happened, again, we would all be speaking possibly Chinese, Russian, or Iranian, possibly even Korean. And as I told you before, there was a speech, a military speech. He said, we don't want war. And he said, but we don't want war. But guess what? If it comes to war, someone else will raise your sons and daughters. And that applies today. If a civil war came, we don't want war. But I don't want to tell you someone. I'm going to say of those 4 or 5, those are the ones that would raise all of our children. Whether it's the Chinese, the Russians, or the Koreans, or even the Iranians, the Middle East, Hezbollah, or whoever. They would be raising our sons and daughters. You can forget America. Go ahead and have a civil war. You have too many enemies. You can't win. You have too many enemies within, and you have too many enemies around the world. To think that you could have a civil war and think that you would survive. You wouldn't. It would be the end for all of us. Even if you survived it for on a, I guess on a pulse or something, it still would be the end of it. And so what would make people have a civil war in the first place? It goes back to the first civil war. They were fighting over slaves. They was making profits. So when they ended the first civil war, I heard a preacher say this, and it was so true. He said that the black man was physically emancipated, but he had yet to be spiritually emancipated. So what people fail to understand is that although the first civil war ended, those who lost or those who weren't killed, they went home and they figured out another way. Okay, we can't work them for free, but we can still work them for free. Basically free. Okay, instead of working them for free, we'll work them for $1. Instead of calling them a slave, we'll call them criminals or felons. And this is why when you see Greg Abbott speaking about illegal immigration, he doesn't take the opportunity to determine that what type of crime was committed, which is, we know the crime that was committed is illegally entering into the United States of America without proper credentials, right? Now, what kind of crime is that? Okay, you can say it's a felony, right? So he justifies that by calling them all criminals and thugs and felons and rapists, all of the meaning words that they can use. But yet they go up to the nation capital and invade the capital in the wrong way, and they're patriots. Do you see that? Donald Trump commits crimes and all type of things, and he's still not a criminal, a thug, a rape. He doesn't group that. And this is why we're fighting the Civil War, because it's fighting over slaves. In other words, to be able to keep a status symbol, when you look at status attainment theory, in order to keep our families intact and to keep yours broken up, we have these things in place, like felonies, crime, criminal. That's why once they put a felony on you, anything over $500 or anything, that they have reduced things down so low that they can make anybody a felon. And it doesn't have to be for something like murder, or that you went into a bank with a gun and stole $100,000. It could be something as simple as $600 of felony. Something is entering into an airport with a firearm or something, you see, and now you're a felon. Now, once they label you as a felon or a criminal, so to speak, they lump you into a bucket of all bad things. You could have went to jail for some Pampers, stealing Pampers. You could have went to jail for a hot check. You know, they're not going to say, oh, he had a return check. They're going to say, no, he's a felon, he's a criminal. And at that point, now you're in the same bucket as a person that's raping children, a person that is sodomizing little boys, robbing banks for millions of dollars. People are not trying to figure out what you went to jail for. You are a slave, aka criminal. And so now, because what they call destroying this country is really you're trying to take away our status. You're trying to break down the barriers that we have created to make sure our sons and daughters are better than your sons and daughters. You're trying to take down the barriers that we have established. And here's the funny part about that, the sad part. When they say they're sons and daughters and they like separating us, the reality of it is their sons and daughters are related to your sons and daughters, because their cousins and uncles are the ones that rape your mothers and grandmothers. They are related. It reminded me of the movie Time Machine. And in the Time Machine, they did a nuclear war. And the nuclear war had created two races of people. And one of the races of people was at the bottom of the earth and the other one at the top. And the people at the top couldn't come in at the daylight because they had been down so long under the earth that they couldn't stand light. So obviously they couldn't farm or, have agriculture, so they became cannibals. And they were dependent on the people at the top. And so the guy from the past came into the future and saw this big dilemma. And he was talking to the head cannibal at the beneath the earth, wondering how did this happen. And he told him, we are who we are because of you. And they are who they are for us. They were eating on the people at the top. And so the Civil War, if it was one, they're fighting because they are eating off of minorities. They are eating off of people being illegal, because it allows them to keep a certain status, even if that status is simply to look down on somebody. Because let's keep it 100. A lot of white people are not doing well in America. People in America are really silly like that. They could be living in a trailer park, barely can make ends meet. But if you give them the right to look down on a black man, or to look down on an Asian, or what they call a Mexican, they will go for that. I feel good about them numbers. This is why so many are saying Donald Trump is good for America. How? What have he done for you, really? Nothing too much, but give you the right to talk about somebody or call them a nigger or look down on them and blame all your problems on other people. To say the reason why we don't have a lot of jobs is because black people are stealing. No, those are your cousins and some of them your sons and daughters, because they are the very offspring of the people that are related to you that they raped. We want to talk about the alphabet community, same-sex marriage, how these women are going around wanting to be with the same sex. And you see the Republican Party playing politics about we need to stop this, they're destroying the family. You need to stop lying. You created those people. People don't just come up with crazy ideas of same-sex relations. With some of your freaky uncles that was flipping down in all the black communities, raping women and just traumatizing people's mind. These people come up. You hear all the time Donnie McKirkland speak about his cousins or uncles or somebody raping him. What makes another man want to sleep with little boys or something? It's most likely they were done that way as well. When you see someone messing with little boys or young boys molesting each other or whatever they're doing, most likely that is a trait that was interjected. And we look no further into slavery. We look no further into Jim Crow. We're not just talking about 1865. Did you not think about Jim Crow laws that lasted all the way up until possibly to the time that I was born in 1969? But so many white women are so in denial of all of this. And let me show you this. You hear them using self-defense terms of race card, victim mindset. But do you hear them saying that to white women when they talk about Title V and white women not having the same rights or equity as white men or men, period? Are they telling them that you need to stop having a victim mindset? Are we saying this to white people today that's in the MAGA party, MAGA this, and do they have a victim mindset? No, they'll say something different. Now, we don't complain like y'all. We do something about it. You do something about it because you are the majority. If you were the minority, you wouldn't say nothing. You barely say something now, and you're the majority. And the reason you do is because you go out and you get guns. And you see Greg Abbott in Texas and all these Republican governments so big on Second Amendment rights. But they're not on Second Amendment rights. They're on white Second Amendment rights. Because as soon as they see a black man with a gun, they want to say, see your papers. Do you have a concealed weapon like handgun? Let me see a driver license. Even if it's open carry, let's see if you're a felon or not. And so their whole thing is to make sure you are a felon. And they'll say things like, no, as long as you have the right to operate it legally. Their whole mindset is to get you illegally by putting a felony on you so that you cannot have a gun to defend yourself. It's not about Second Amendment rights. It's about their right to own a gun and your right not to have rights. In essence, you don't have any right but the rights they give you. So this is all about keeping our advantage. And this is what this so-called possible civil war is all about. And they're always talking about it's not about race. As if you say it enough, you will believe it. It's not about race. It's not about race. This is about equality. This is about race. No, it's not. This is about your self-perceived right, as Bull Connor said. The law. We are the law. You can't deny that with Greg Abbott defying the commander-in-chief. Whether you agree with Biden or not, he's still the president. He's still the commander-in-chief of all military forces. And here come Abbott saying, even if he does fertilize a troop, I got other people in law enforcement and all this gonna stand with me. What? That's rebellion. That's treason. But let a black man do that. Let a black man do that? What type of example or statement is Greg Abbott showing right there? See, if Greg Abbott was a black governor, they would be calling for him to be arrested, saying treason. This is what we deal with in the United States of America, how laws are created by the majority and they are enforced by the majority and they are interpreted by them because they the one wrote them. So they said, no, that's not what that meant. It's always in their favor. Because Greg Abbott is not going to allow you as an African American or minority that are not so-called all white decide what you are going to stop him from doing. Greg Abbott himself went into Dallas County and brought in state troopers into Dallas County because he deemed that the district attorney, the black district attorney, was not doing. He didn't yield to the DA and say, well, let him do that. No, he said, I'm going to just walk over you and bring state troopers within the city. What is that saying? We are the law as white people. And when you don't side with us, we don't care if you're the president of the United States. So what? We don't care what they say in that Constitution. We only agree with it when we agree with it. And this is what this is all about. You're not winning no civil war. That's crazy. And so the fact that you see so many white people running around here with guns and saying we stand with Texas. I stand with the United States of America. And that's why when you go into the military, it says both foreign and domestic. And at this point, Greg Abbott is a domestic terrorist. Whether he see that or not, he's a domestic terrorist. I think he's a good governor, but I think he's off base now. I actually voted for Greg Abbott. And I think he's doing a good job to a certain degree, as much best as it can be when you in a state full of Confederates and Republicans. So he's doing good for considering. Let me say it like that. But at the end of the day, he still is a domestic terrorist. And you also have not committed it yet, but he's teetering on treason. Just that fact. If you don't agree with something, you don't commit treason, you don't go and, but this is what they say. But when it applies to them, they get to go up to the White House and kick in the doors. they get to tell the federal government you can't come in here. Could you imagine you telling the state troopers or the sheriff department they can't do something? Wow. And this is what is telling of what we're dealing with in the United States of America. This is what politics is all about. Politics is all about making sure white people in America, the so-called white, and who are the white people? It is the people from Europe. That's what they're saying. If you're from Europe and you're not from any other country and you came here in America, this is our country. This is our country. And we say that openly. Is all no. When it start being all, that's when we lift our little horns up and start showing you it's not for you. We're not talking about you. The same thing you see in churches and everything else. They'll tell you all day it's a church for all people, but you'll find out real quick it's not for all people. It's for certain people. Wow. And so you see so many people ready for war and claiming to want the truth. As I heard a person say, you can't handle the truth, and you definitely can't handle war. Because I don't care what you say, I love history, and I've yet to study a war where no one died. So all of you that can't wait for a war, I hope you're ready for a grave too. All of you that's so ready for a civil war, wow, you talking about casualties. And a lot of you that ignorant that you willing to go to hell behind some status. Wow, that's sad. Because a lot of you going to hell. And it doesn't matter that you think it's a good cause. That's why the Bible talks about people being deceived. A lot of people are in hell that were deceived. Man, that has to be a lot. I bet people down there right now fighting like cats and dogs, mad because somebody deceived them and led them to hell. And that's what we're dealing with in the United States of America. And let me add this. I don't know how you're going to determine who's on what side anyway with all this mixing up. And that's the problem within the United States of America. This is why we're about to have a civil war. And it won't happen, but if it did happen, like I say, won't happen. It won't happen right away. I do see it possibly eventually happen, because that possibly can be, let me say B. Let me not say B. Let me say it this way. That would explain why when you look in the Old Testament, you hear about the United States and you really don't hear about the United States. So I could see the United States falling from within. I really could. And the reason I could see it falling within, because America was never great. It was never a Christian country. It's just a country that tolerated Christianity or tolerated God or pretended to love God. And so the only hope for the United States of America is to do what Martin Luther King said, is to live up to the meaning of his creed. I'm not siding with the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. Both of them are off their rockers. But my point is that you would have to literally live up to the meaning of his creed. And if you want to understand all this feminism and the alphabet community, then understand yourself. You created them. See, what you say, the Confederacy, the Republican parties, all these so-called evangelicals, you're the one that created the LGBT community. You want to look at all these freaks and people that talking about they self-identify? You created that when your cousins were down there raping people, messing with little kids. Now they grew up with a messed up head talking about they are self-identified, and you already looking like what created them. Your uncle created them. What do you mean? Your brother created them. Your great-granddaddy created them. So folk didn't just wake up one day and thinking they a man when they a whole woman. And then black people didn't create that. You want to put it on black people, but what you won't want to identify is that go do a DNA test on most of all these people that you think are crazy. And what you're going to see is that they got white mixed in them. All of them, mostly. You rarely hear of an African, 100% African, coming in America saying that he's a homosexual or he's self-identified. This is not to say that there are no gay Africans. I'm saying you rarely. When you see all this stuff going on, it's a full European or it's someone that is biracial or multiracial. When you think about African cultures and African empires, and you think about Romans and Greeks, who do you see most with the boy play, the perverted lifestyle, the sodomy and all that? Where do you see that at? Mostly in Greek and Roman culture. So let's stop playing games and stop trying to act like you're so sanctified, trying to keep the family together. That's a great thing that you're trying to keep the family together. And you're trying to champion Donald Trump. Let me say this. If Donald Trump went last night or whatever, last week, and repented and asked the Lord to receive in his life, I'm all for that. But let's not try to pretend like Donald Trump has been living this sanctified life all his life. He has not. So he's not in a position to come heavy-handed now. I'm not saying he can't speak or he can't change his mind. He has a right to change his mind now. He has a right to say, let's go in the right direction. I'm all for that. But let's not be so heavy-handed. What I mean by that is to act like other people can't change their mind either. And that you're just going to lock them into a situation they can never recover from. That it's like you can never be a full citizen. That's crazy. People should have a pathway to full citizenship, to be full citizens, to be redeemed. And in America, that's where we're fighting over, or that's what they're trying to possibly fight over. We don't want to give you a pathway to be on our level. We want it to be, once we get you locked in as a slave, you are a slave for life. That's what slavery was all about. And that's what the new Jim Crow is all about. That's what being a felon or a criminal is all about. You are a criminal. They don't care what you've done. It's just the fact you did it and you can never get out of it. You are a slave. You forever be a slave. Wow. And they profile you and hunt you down until you do something, even if it's simply obstruction and resisting arrest. If you have the right to carry a gun, we're gonna mess with you until we can take that right away. Come on. And so I'm closing this mess topic today about American Civil War and politics. The fact is this: to have a civil war is suicide, utter suicide. To have a civil war is to basically say you want your daughters and sons to learn Chinese. You want them to learn Russian. You want them to learn to speak Iranian. You want them to learn to be a Russian citizen. That's basically what you're saying. You're basically saying, I want my sons and daughters to be raised by Russians and Chinese and Iranians and Koreans. Because that's exactly what's going to happen. Okay? Go ahead and keep acting a nut if you want to. Keep believing the lie that you're superior. Listen, America won World War II, the Civil War, the Revolutionary War by chance. It wasn't by might. The Bible is clear. Time and chance happened to them all. It's not given to man a skill or might. It's by time and chance. The Japanese actually could have defeated America. America found the code. Their code gave them the advantage. They actually wasn't ready. Could have lost. Could have lost World War II. Not only to the Japanese, technically could have lost to the Germans if they wasn't so stupid enough to have all those enemies at one time. Think about it. If he wasn't so silly enough to openly go up against the Jews, and he could have did it secretly and took his time, America was doing a good job with black Americans, so to speak, the mix, by secretly getting them through mass incarcerations, slowly spreading drugs. But now it's got the hats out, and now you're openly saying stupid stuff like Adolf Hitler did. And now people are waking up. You had them when you was pushing the same agenda that Nazi Germany started out with, keeping it undercover. But I'll be honest with you, Donald Trump is a racist, but he was the best thing that ever happened to African Americans. And not because he's not a racist, but because he was stupid enough to be speaking openly. That's basically why he's the best thing that could have happened to African Americans. He's the best thing that could have happened to any minority. And he is the best thing right now. Donald Trump is the best thing for every minority. He's the best thing for Russia and China, to be honest. Because when white people were at their best in America, when they had presidents that spoke one thing and kept doing it undercover. Black people was ready up until 1970. They fell asleep. And when they got Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, they were asleep. Bill Clinton put more black people in prison than any president. And black people didn't really see it. But Donald Trump could have got right on that same thing, and since he's such a racist, because he is, but he just had to be public with it, that white power. He had to let the world know. And now you waking up black people and you waking up everybody. They seeing what you're doing now. Whoa. And that's why I think that he's going to be actually the best thing for black people, whether they see that or not. He is the best thing for us because he is revealing everything that people try to deny. And they're following the same little sneaky thing they did before by putting black people up to say they're not. See, that's the way they do it. I was in the service. That's the way racist white people do things. Whenever they want to do something to you, they get a black face. They say, oh, I got a black friend. They follow that path. Or they'll say, well, a black man said it. So when Tim Scott get up and says something, it says, I'm not racist. See, black people cannot vote a president in, but when it's deadlocked, they can tip the scale. See, black people have enough votes that when whites are deadlocked, then whoever blacks go with, it tips the scale into their favor. So this is all a white fight. And they're fighting over black people. The right to keep black people as slaves. As Patrick Cleveland once gave he actually proposed a proposal, let's free the slaves before the North can. That way they could be loyal to us. And we don't really have to make them free. They're free, but not really free. They're not working for free, but they technically are. And that's what you have in the Republican Party. They freed a lot of black people and gave them a little position or a little money so that they can be loyal to the Republicans. See, that same thing that General Patrick Cleveland suggested Republicans today are implementing. A lot of black people, no, they are good people. Yeah, we'll give y'all a little, but you're still under us now. That's why Tim Scott, I just love you. That's where it's at. And so as we closing this podcast on today, I want you to know that to have an American Civil War is suicide. Utter suicide. Straight up. And as he said in the speech, we don't want war. But if it comes to war, I promise you, someone else is going to raise your sons and daughters. And so to kind of interject into that speech stands true today. We don't want war. But if it comes to that, I'm almost certain that I know who's going to raise all of our sons and daughters. And it will be the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, and the Koreans. They are going to raise all of our sons and daughters. I hope you have a great day and enjoy yourself.